and sing that for us tonight, because we talked about it. At least you held up your end of the deal. All right, so first I'm going to tell everybody, I am not a preacher, I'm a teacher. You ask my kids at school, I'm not a teacher, I'm a coach. You ask the parents of the players that I coach, I'm an unintelligent donkey. So we're not going to, you may think about that a little later. But when Ryan called me the other day, I was doing a Bible study in the book of Jonah. And Jonah's got 4 chapters, it's real short. So that's probably why I picked it to start doing it. So when he asked me if I could come up here and I guess preach, I said, yeah, I've got something on Jonah we can do. And so that's where we're going to start. We're going to start in Jonah chapter 1. That's what we're going to go through tonight. Ryan said he's going to be out every 2 weeks or something to that nature. So he said he may get me and Will to fill in. So it's my turn tonight. Will will get next time. So first of all, Jonah is probably the most popular biblical story in the Bible. It doesn't matter who you talk to, whether they're a believer or not. If you tell them or ask them, hey, who got ate by the whale, swallowed by the whale, they're probably going to tell you Jonah. Jonah is a very, very popular, I guess, Bible story, you'd say. Jonah was a prophet. All right, a prophet, they are called to deliver messages from God. While I was researching Jonah, I found out that Jonah was the first prophet told to go to a non-Gentile nation and basically prophesy against them. But then we're going to find out that Jonah refuses to do what God calls him to do. Alright, so we're going to start with Jonah chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. It says, Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. So firstly it says, word of the Lord came to Jonah. So that's going to tell you right there that Jonah is a prophet. Alright, he said, arise and go to Nineveh. Well, I got to thinking, I don't know what Nineveh is. So I went and looked it up. And to be honest, it sounds a lot like Jackson now. So, but Nineveh is present-day Iraq. It was the capital of Assyria. It called it a great city. They weren't talking about their behavior. Alright, because the Ninevites' behavior was anything but great. However, it was a big city. It had 100-foot walls all the way around it, and it was 8 miles. That wall went around 8 miles. It says on the outskirts, it was a 60-mile circumference, 600,000 people. Basically, they were awful people. They were murderers. They were violent people. Some guy kind of compared them to a modern-day terrorist. But yet they were very powerful. Syria was, like I said, really, really powerful. And actually Israel had to pay tribute to Assyria to prevent them from attacking them. So Jonah wasn't really excited about going to talk to these people. He did not want to go, and simply he refused to go. Alright, so if you look at verse 3, it says, But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it, to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Alright, so the Lord tells Jonah to go to Nineveh. Alright, but Jonah decides, hey, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go to Tarshish. And I've got a picture of a map that I know you can't see, but I'll explain. That shows you where Joppa is. Then you've got Nineveh, that's 550 miles. But Tarshish is 2,500 miles away. Alright? So God's telling you to go 550 miles and you end up trying to go 2,500 miles. You really don't want to do that. So, but if you want to think about it on a regular map, our time, alright? You know, I'm a Disney World guy. I love going to Disney World. Nineveh's about 550 miles, so that would be like going from Mendenhall to Disney, right? Joppa to Tarshish is 2,500. That'd be like going from here to Alaska, right? So Jonah's really trying to go somewhere where he thinks God's not going to be able to see him. All right, but Tarshish is present-day Spain. All right, so he's trying to go there, which is on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. All right, it's a very wealthy place. All right, so when I'm sitting there reading all this, I'm thinking from our honeymoon, we went to Jamaica and just absolutely crystal clear blue waters. All right, so that's where Jonah's trying to go. He's trying to go of a beautiful place, relaxing, doesn't really want to have to go to Nineveh and think about what's going on. But Jonah's doing what? He's running from God, right? And you know that we cannot run from God. God is omnipresent. He is everywhere all the time. And in my opinion, Jonah's probably the most relatable prophet in the Bible because we all do that. Right? We get a call from God and we do what we want to do. We go our own way. I can think of many times in my life where God's told me to do something, and it's like, well, God, I'll do this, but I'm not going to go much farther than that. Like, if you'd have told me 3 months ago I'd be up here talking to you on a Sunday night, you're not going to be right. But here we are. Y'all are stuck with me for the night. Now going to verse 4 and 5. It says, "But the Lord sent out a great wind on the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship was about to be broken up. Then the mariners were afraid, and every man cried out to his God, and threw the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten the load. But Jonah had gone down into the lowest parts of the ship, and had lain down and was fast asleep." Right? So the mariners are just the workers on the ship. It says that the wind got so bad that the ship was about to basically break. Right? And I can imagine that this probably isn't a very small ship, right? It's probably a decent sized ship. So the wind has to be pretty good. The waves have to be pretty bad for that ship to break in half. Right? So the mariners were scared and they cried out to their God. All right? So that's an important statement right there. The mariners cried out to their God. We're going to come back and revisit that at the end. But they were throwing things over. They were just trying to lighten the load of the ship. Sometimes I wonder, what did they throw over? Did they throw over food? Did they throw over weapons? We'll never really know. But it says that Jonah went to the bottom of the ship, laid down, and went to sleep. All right? So when I went deep sea fishing, we didn't go out very far. We probably went 10, 15 miles. But I had one buddy that got extremely seasick. So what they did was they took him and put him in the middle of the boat. They had like a little captain's quarters with a bathroom and everything. And that's where they put him to try to make him get better. Okay? So apparently the bottom of the boat in the middle is where it's less stormy. Alright, so I guess that's why Jonah was able to go down there and go to sleep. Verse 6 says, "So the captain came to him and said to him, 'What do you mean, sleeper? Arise, call on your God. Perhaps your God will consider us, so that we may not perish.'" Alright, so the captain walks down there and just simply tells Jonah, "Wake up." Everybody else has called on their God, and this sea is still raging. It's not calmed down. So call on your God. See if you can stop it. So we go into 7. It says, "And they said to one another, 'Come, let us cast lots, that we may know for whose causes trouble has come upon us.' So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah." Alright, so I didn't really know what casting lots was. I couldn't ever find a good actual definition of it, but pretty much the way someone sized it up is everybody had a rock. Okay, everybody had their own rock. Put it into a pouch, you shake it up, and they started casting lots. Alright, well, they cast it out, and like, uh-oh, this is Jonah's rock, right? So, Jonah's rock got picked, but we all kind of knew that was coming, right? Because God's in control, God's handling everything, and Jonah got picked. Alright, can you imagine Jonah's feelings as they're drawing out these rocks? Right? Because I know as a kid, I have 2 sisters, older sister, younger sister. And I went outside one day, and I was kicking the ball against the wall, and I hit the window and broke it. Well, I didn't tell my parents because I didn't want to get in trouble. So I waited until they got home, and you break the window in your parents' bedroom, they're more than likely going to find out relatively quick. So they called all three of us in to the den and basically just like, look, I know somebody broke the window, going over who it was, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, not me. But I had that guilty feeling the whole time. Like, I knew it was me, but I didn't tell my sisters, but somehow I knew that my parents knew that it was me. It eventually came out that it was me. I got in trouble, and my sisters were not happy that I didn't confess earlier, because they had to sit there and listen to the whole spiel that my dad had to give. But I can just imagine that's how Jonah kind of feels while they're picking all these rocks and everything. He knows it's him. He's the one causing all the problems. All right, going to verse 8, it said, Then they said to him, Please tell us, for whose cause is this trouble upon us? What is your occupation? And where do you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you? So he said to them, I am Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and dry land. Then the men were exceedingly afraid, and said to him, Why have you done this? For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord, because he told them. So Jonah basically told them who his God was, and that he fled from God. And as we can see, our runnings from God not only affects us, but it also affects the people around us too. You might be the only way that somebody is going to get to hear about Christ. And if we run away from our call as Christians to spread the word, that person may never have a relationship with Jesus. So it's just not others' actions, it's not our actions, how our running from God can affect others. Going to verse 11, it says, Then they said to him, What shall we do to you that the sea may be calm for us? For the sea was growing more tempestuous. 12 says, And he said to them, Pick me up and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will become calm for you, for I know that this great tempest is because of me. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to return to land, but they could not, for the sea continued to grow more tempestuous against them. So basically, Jonah's telling the mariners, sacrifice me, throw me overboard, and all of this will stop. And the mariners are like, well, you want us to throw you in? I don't think that sounds like a great idea. Let's just go back and row harder and see if we can get out of it. But as hard as they rowed, they couldn't do it, and the mariners knew what they needed to do, which was throw Jonah overboard. But kind of like us when we have problems, instead of doing what we need to do first, we try to fix it ourselves. So what we should do first is turn to God. So they tried to row their way out of it, and they couldn't. In verse 14 it says, Therefore they cried out to the Lord and said, We pray, O Lord, please do not let us perish for this man's life, and do not charge us with innocent blood. For you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you. Alright, so like I said earlier, they prayed to their God. But now they see the power of the God that Jonah worships, and now they're praying to him, asking him not to basically blame them for throwing him overboard. They don't want the sin of his death on their hand. 15 says, So they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and offered a sacrifice to the Lord, and took vow. So now, like I said, they're seeing the power of Jonah's God, and how basically now they're believers of God, of our God. But yet earlier, they were all praying to their God. So you can see how even if we sometimes don't do what we're supposed to do, God still shows himself. God will still reveal himself. And that's the way it was here. God basically works through us, even in hard times, even if we don't do what he tells us to do. But we should just have to turn to him when we are in need. Jonah 1:17 says, "Now the Lord prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights." All right, so that's the story that everyone knows, right, when they hear Jonah. They hear Jonah, they know that he is swallowed by a whale. All right, basically, it's saying that God prepared it. God prepares for us. God is in control of us. We have to trust in Him and simply let go and let God. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is basically just God's calling. Everybody here knows who Tim Tebow is, right? Tim Tebow was a quarterback at the University of Florida. In the 2009 National Championship game, they played Oklahoma. For the entire season, he had worn eye black under his eyes, and he would write Philippians 4:13. "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And he's worn it all year. They only lost one game that year. Jack, you can tell everybody who they lost to. You got to know this one.
Alabama.
No, they lost to Ole Miss in 1 year. One game. All right, but when he was preparing for the national championship game, it was actually the day of the game. He felt God call on his heart to change what he wore on his eye black. And athletes are very superstitious. Like, if they felt like they had a good game, they'll wear the same socks until their feet fall off. Like, they're going to continue to do the same thing. Well, Tim Tebow felt that God was telling him to change it from Philippians 4:13 to John 3:16, just for that game. So he went and told Coach Meyer that he was going to change his eye black. He said, "No, you're not. You've worn this all year. You know, we're in the national championship game. You're not going to change it." He went to the players on his team. He's like, "Hey, look, guys, I think I'm gonna change it up. I'm gonna write John 3:16." And they all basically said the same thing. "I don't think you should do that. We've been winning. You know, you shouldn't change anything from normal that might cause us to lose." But in the end, Tim Tebow said yes to God. He changed it up. On his eye black, he wrote John 3:16. That night, Florida ended up winning the national championship 24-14, and Google had a statement that came out that during that one football game, 94 million people Googled John 3:16 that night.
Amen.
So it can be something as simple as changing your eye black. It can be something as simple as passing somebody a letter in the grocery store that's got a Bible verse on it. Anything that we can do, or anything that you feel like God has called you to do, it may not change 94 million people's lives, but it can change one. And I think as long as we're doing that, that's what we need to do. So, lastly, what has God been calling you to do that you've been putting off? If there's something that you feel like you're being called to do, you haven't done it, why not start now? Why not start today? Like I said, it doesn't take hard, or we were talking about this back there, it's not hard to be nice to people, right? Brother Nick said that he held the door open for a lady, and she said that people don't do that very often. Like, it's not hard to do something good for people, so it's not hard for us to just take that little step out of our comfort zone to tell somebody else about God. So if our instrumentalists want to come play, the altar is open. If you want to come down and pray to God, if you want to come down and ask God to help you the strength to do the things that He's calling you to do, or if you want to make a decision in your life to turn to Jesus, I'll be more than happy to stand up here and pray with you.